Growing up in the 80s meant spending countless hours in front of the TV or computer screen playing 8-bit video games. If you don't remember, don't worry. Hello and welcome to RetroRoam, where we'll refresh your memory about 10 80s games that you no longer really see or hear anything about. These 8-bit games were a regular staple of every 80s kid's childhood. The most famous of these games include Mario Bros. And Pac-Man, but many other games have faded into oblivion with very few mentions over the years. In this video, we'll mention some of the lesser-known retro games. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more retro videos like this one. Number 1 on our list is Space Invaders. One of the most talked about games among retro enthusiasts, Space Invaders is often known as a cult classic. This game, like all other retro games, is very simple in its nature. The main purpose of the game is to fend off extraterrestrial armadas that are coming at you while piloting your own aircraft. With each level, the game gets pulses, the speed keeps getting faster and faster, and the tempo of the music keeps on increasing as well, making it impossible for you not to get completely engrossed in it. There was nothing quite so satisfying as blasting each saucer out back in the day. The second retro game on our list today is Battle Cry. And what's better than a gun game? A tank game. As soon as you turned on the game, the intro clip would start, and you knew you were in for a good time. It was probably the first tank game any of us really played. Battle Cry was released in 1983 by game developing company Namco. At the start of the game, you were given a base that you had to protect at all costs. It was surrounded by walls and enemy tanks would attack from the outside. Eliminating all the enemy tanks and successfully defending your base resulted in victory. With its variety of maps, in-game upgrades, and different classes of tanks, it was one of the most fun and challenging games to come out back in the 80s. Number 3 on our list is Karateka, and what games list is complete without a fighting game? As the name suggests, Karateka was a fast-paced karate fighting game designed by Jordan Mechner. The one good thing every good game has in common is a great story, and Karateka is one such game. The plot of this story starts with a princess who gets kidnapped by an evil warlord. Our protagonist rises to the occasion and sets out to save the princess with teachings of martial arts. The best part about this game is the very cinematic feel of the cutscenes that revolve around the protagonists and antagonists. This not only makes the storyline adopt a dramatic vibe, but also keeps it very engaging. Every 80s kid wanted to be the hero with his karate skills and street-savvy fighting style. Number 4 on our list is yet another Namco wonder, Pole Position. Pole Position was one of the first racing games that made it to the hearts of every kid around the world. Starting from how it simulated motion from a 3D perspective, and the vanishing point accurately while using the popular rear view camera angle, keeping the car in sight at all times. While it might not look like a very big deal compared to the games we see today, at the time Pole Position was released, it truly was one of a kind, and successfully pulling this off in that era was a huge achievement. Apart from the graphics being ahead of its time, it also had racing circuits based on actual NASCAR racing circuits. Let's put this impact in perspective. After the release of Pole Position, in less than a few months, it had become the highest earning arcade game in North America. And speaking of racing, 5th on our list today is Track and Field. Released in 1983 by Konami, Track and Field was originally called Hyper Olympics. Let's not all think about why exactly it was going to be named Hyper Olympics, and rather we should all agree that we're happy that it didn't end up getting named that. The game itself was a perfect combination of sports and gaming. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that it was the first version of an esport game. It included multiple Olympic events like the javelin throw, hurdles, high jump, 100-meter dash, and the long jump. Track and Field was one of the most famous 80s games, although it has really faded into oblivion now. Then we come across a game involving man's best friend and hunting. That's right, Duck Hunt is number 6 on our list. One of the most fun and competitive retro games, Duck Hunt was a game that involved having a console and a light gun. Light guns worked on the same principle as a camera by capturing light. It would send this photo to the console, which would then determine where it was aiming when the trigger was pulled and if any targets were hit. Quite a feat considering the technology available at the time. As the name suggests, the goal of the game was to hunt ducks. This was done by pointing the light gun in the direction of the flying duck and pulling the trigger. Upon registering a trigger pull, a disc would fly on screen and hit the duck. It was very fun getting to hit the duck and gaining points when your dog caught your felled prey, but whenever you missed, the dog would taunt you and laugh at you for missing. So much for man's best friend. Speaking of animals reminds us of the other retro classic that's number 7th on our list, Penguin Land. Boasting very impressive visuals for its time, Penguin Land was a puzzle-type game where you had to protect a penguin egg by digging underground and getting it to safety. The deeper you dug, the harder the game became, and different obstacles tried to destroy the egg. Even though most people today would cringe at the retro visuals of a lot of those 80s games, Penguin Land is actually still a delight to this day if you give it a chance. 8th on our list is Circus Charlie. Yet another very classic retro game with the most memorable 8-bit visuals and sounds, Circus Charlie was highly addictive. It was again released by Konami and was an instant hit. The objective of the game was to steer your clown through different circus-themed obstacles. Once they had all been completed, you get to play it all over again with increased difficulty. The obstacles differed from tightrope walking, jumping through hoops, jumping between trampolines, riding a horse, and doing a trapeze act. Like most retro video games, the timing was the key to winning. The fact that the game was based on the perfect timing made everyone playing it even more invested and competitive. Circus Charlie championships at the time were no joke. 9th on our list is Lode Runner. A personal favorite of mine, a platform game published in 1983, Lode Runner is highly addictive. The objective of the game is to collect piles of gold placed all over a level. Sounds easy? Well, that's not all. You had to do this while being vigilant of enemies and avoiding them at all costs. Players could climb rails or ladders, run or dig holes to traverse through every level and evade your enemies. Once all gold was collected, the player would progress to the next level. Every level you'd pass would bring a new one that is more elaborate and more difficult than the last. Fun fact, it is also a retro favorite of the creator of Tetris. And last but not least, today we have the 10th on our list, which was Gauntlet. Nowadays, arcades are a very rare sight. They're either found in some corner of a dilapidated mall or in a special arcade gaming center too stubborn to go out of business. But back in the 80s, arcades were one of the pure and undiluted joys of a kid's life. Arcade zones used to be filled with school children who just got out or dedicated gamers making records. The majority of 80s kids grew up in the joystick-laden machines found in arcades, and one of the most notable games in this arcade time period was none other than Gauntlet. Gauntlet was a dungeon crawler multiplayer game developed by Atari, one of the first of its kind. With its old school graphics that were simple but somehow still very intricate, this top-down adventure mixed action and RPG elements beautifully on the small arcade screen. And with that, we come to the end of today's video. So are there any fun but forgotten retro games that you guys remember from the 80s that aren't on this list? Definitely let us know in the comments below because we love to hear from you. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on all things retro. Tuning out, RetroRoam.